Hello, everybody. I'm continuing with my translation, improvised, but with little preparation, of the book of interviews with Slavoj Zizek, entitled À travers le réel, that you can translate as across the real, through the real, maybe even uh, traversing the real. Uh, Zizek is a philosopher of traversing. Um, with Lacan, he has theorized the notion of traversing the fantasy. In this book, as shown by the title, he's also a theorist of traversing the real. So, brief summing up of the argument up to now, and a slight callback to the beginning. We've noticed that Zizek is often giving sort of uh, lists of three senses or three stages in the evolution of various concepts in Lacan, or um, types of attitude that he himself, Zizek, has to Lacan's work. So this notion of three is going to come up again. It's not immediately obvious that it's a dialectical triad or anything like that. That's just how his mind is working for the moment in this book. So we can go back and we can see that from the answer to the very first question, which is about Zizek's personal experience of psychoanalysis and what did he learn from it. Um, uh, in a sense, that divides into three, that answer, and it may be a sort of schema for other people's experience of analysis. So, one, there's a crisis. In his case, it was a crisis out of a despair in a love affair where he wanted to commit suicide. That's often the case. You can think about psychoanalysis, be theoretically interested. You could think maybe you've got a problem and maybe you should do something about it. But one major motive for actually starting a psychoanalysis, actually doing something about it, is that you're undergoing a major crisis. So that's one. Then that was temptation to suicide was cured after 3 months, but he continued. And there are lots of reasons why when the presenting symptom is resolved, the people continue. So many people stop after their presenting symptom is cured. They're happy and they stop. But you can go on for quite a long time without having any particular crisis driving uh, the psychoanalysis. Crises can come up during the analysis and be resolved, but there's no longer the necessity for a crisis. So this is what Zizek did for another 2 years or 2.5 years in all. And he says that during that time, he was quite consciously, in his case, resisting the psychoanalysis, resisting the analysis with all his strength by just talking all the time and not allowing a pause, a silence, a gap where the analyst could intervene with something that would really make a difference and really change things. So that's number two. The reason or the modality of continuing the analysis is itself a symptom. And Zizek's reaction as well is that's like what happens in our society in general. There's a hyperactivity going on that has as its unconscious intent maybe, but has as its effect preventing change. And then the third stage in an analytic process, whether it's on the couch or in other circumstances, is stopping this hyperactive activity and allowing for the pause, the silence, the gap where real change will take place. It seems to suggest that it's the stopping of the analysis that is the moment of change, or just before, or just after, as if one could stop the analysis and then in a sort of after effect experience the effect of change. So we have one, crisis; two, resistance and hyperactivity; and three, change itself. So I've reconstructed what he says at the beginning in terms of this schematics of three steps or three stages. And we should understand that as, to a certain extent, logical time rather than chronological time. And at the same time, because we're going to see this later on, that logical time is not the be all and end all, because that's still too empirical, even if we've reconstructed and things logically and changed the order. That this logical time itself needs to be disturbed by the real. So talking about the real, that gets us on to chapter 2, which I'm going to be continuing today. Chapter 2 is the object Lacan. And there Zizek distinguishes three senses of the real and perhaps three stages in the conception of the real in Lacan's career. So first, there's the imaginary real. That's the monstrous, abyssal, horrible thing real. It is the real, but it's the imaginary real. Secondly, you have the real of the symbolic. So it's a formalism. I think that's what Zizek assigns Zizek's graphs and math themes and topology to, and you can't stop there. So it's a critique of Lacan that he may have got stuck in this level or stage of the real, which is the symbolic real. And then the third real, which is in Lacan, so he wasn't just stuck, is the real. And the difference with the symbolic real is where there's a meaningless symbolism, okay, and still the real is unsymbolizable. But the further twist is, despite being unsymbolizable, it can't be gotten rid of. It sticks and returns, and it's the stain. So they're the three reals. After that, we get uh, another group of three, which was the end. No, it wasn't the end. Which is still in this chapter. It's Zizek's three differences, as described by himself, three differences with Lacan. There's differences in reading. They didn't read the same things, and when they did, they didn't read them in the same way. Notably, Lacan failed to read Hegel deeply and correctly because he was blocked by Kojevian spectacles. Secondly, 2 and 3 are both around the notion of wisdom. So there's a move towards wisdom, and that's the conformism of Jacques Lacan, his liberal critique of May 68, and that is reiterated by Jacques-Alain Miller. And third, there's another aspect of the invalid association of wisdom with psychoanalysis, and that's the emphasis on the moment of analysis of the encounter with the real, a blinding encounter, which brings us back, and we come back to a healthy distance. We've got the sort of skeptical, cynical, stoical wisdom in our relation to the real. So I talked about that a little as constituting the problem of the ritorno. In Dante's Divine Comedy, there's the Inferno, the hell of neurosis. There's the Purgatorio, as we're using psychoanalytic or speculative work to work through these neuroses and get finally to Paradiso, which is the ecstatic encounter with the real. And that's where Dante's Divine Comedy stops. And the return, that I'm calling the ritorno, is not shown, is not theorized in the Divine Comedy, and later in much philosophy as well. I talked about this in my talk at a conference for Badiou's recent publication in French of The Immanence of Truths. And I was in Badiou's presence. He was sitting right next to me. And at the end, he was quite he was quite happy. He was quite satisfied. He was. He said this was the central problem for him now, the problem of the subjective appropriation of all this conceptual work. Anyhow, there's the three differences with Lacan. This all these fit together, these lists of three. So this brings out, according to Zizek, three different visions of the end, the aim or the end of psychoanalysis in Lacan's work. One, in the early work, it's a question of absolute knowledge defined as complete symbolization. Two, that is seen as too hubristic, and we need to be more modest. Two is just the confrontation with the limits of symbolization of the real, and which is corked off by the phantasm and the necessary, or the fantasy, and the necessity to traverse the fantasy. That is still too substantial a vision with its idea of a fundamental fantasy. So the third vision of the end of analysis, starting in the 1970s, according to Zizek, is you have to accommodate oneself to the symptoms. We don't get rid of the symptoms. We change our relation with the symptoms, and we can't resolve the symptoms and get to a fundamental fantasy because that's too much. That's too substantial, and there Lacan becomes even more modest. We don't get rid of the symptoms. We make them less painful, and we suffer. I'm using Zizek's terms here. We still suffer, but not so much, and we learn to live with the symptoms. I'm calling that. I'm forcing the tray a little, but I'm calling that befriend the symptoms. So we have complete symbolization, traversing the phantasm, and then the phantom, which is befriending the symptoms, or taming the symptoms, like a dangerous pet that one might have. Anyhow, continuing on that line, Zizek accused or criticized Lacan, the Lacan of the ethics of psychoanalysis, as being too close to Bataille and a transgressive vision of forcing the limits, and then that being unsupportable, unbearable, and we can only come back to normal life. So once again, it's the problem of the ritorno that was constellated by the transgressive vision in Lacan in that period, and that was also linked to the idea that Antigone's desire was a pure desire. And in Seminar 11, Lacan says that the desire of the analyst is not a pure desire. So according to Zizek, that's that's Lacan's self-criticism. So what's left after all that? Because things are more complicated than this transgressive approach, and its abandon allow us to think. So we're left with a confrontation with nothing, or with the nothing, but the question arises, what nothing, or which nothing? Because there are several different nothings, according to Zizek. So now we come to page 33, chapter 2, section 2, the readings of Lacan. All that was preface, and it's nearly 20 minutes. So I'm hoping to make shorter videos to make them more easier to listen to and assimilate. Fabien Tarby continues. In any case, Lacan, more than anyone else, is open to insistences or diverse interpretations. What do you think, for example, of Jacques-Alain Miller's reading. Okay, remember this is 2010. Um, he's already said that he diverges with Jacques-Alain Miller on the notion of the uh, uh, blinding encounter with the real, and then the return to conformist liberal approach to everyday life. So, and I think since then, the divergence has become greater still. Not Lacan, Zizek replies, although I am now totally in disagreement with Jacques-Alain Miller, who writes regularly for Figaro and Point, they're two conservative newspapers in France. Figaro is a daily, Point is a weekly. And okay, so he's a regular writer for Figaro and Point. And what he does in politics is catastrophic. So, despite my political disagreement, I think that he is nonetheless the best pedagogue or teacher of Lacan that I know. He, Miller, introduced me to Lacan's thought, and he worked miracles. One takes a few pages of Lacan among the most difficult, from Kant with Sade, or the position of the unconscious, uh, and one understands nothing. One listens to Jacques-Alain Miller for 2 hours, and everything becomes clear. One even wonders then how it was possible that one did not understand. So this is I would call it the power of quilting of Jacques-Alain Miller. You read something from Lacan, you're confused. You can't quilt it. You can't collapse the wave packet. It's all a set of superposed waves and virtualities. Or if you do quilt it, it doesn't seem worthwhile or to make sense. And then you go to Jacques-Alain Miller's seminar, and he quilts it uh, in a rich, complex and definitive way, and it has the retroactive effect. You can no longer even understand why you were confused before. He continues, I admit, even today, my Lacan remains the Lacan of Jacques-Alain Miller. So that's a pretty strong uh, confession, testimony, endorsement. Zizek's Lacan remains Miller's Lacan. But one must also think of Francois Balmez, unfortunately dead in or died a few years ago from a cancer. He too was a genius. He's the only one at the same level as Miller. Um, uh, he gave an incredible reading of Lacan. His death was a tragedy. So this Francois Balmez is someone that Zizek cites regularly. He was very impressed by Balmez's concept of language as the house of being, yes, okay, Heidegger, but with a Lacanian twist, language is the torture house of being. That's where Zizek got the concept from. But what I do not accept in Jacques-Alain Miller's reading is this tendency to interpret Lacan in a teleological manner. I hope my microphone is not too far. Lacan supposedly didn't see this thing in the beginning, and we must search for the point where Lacan finally saw, with in italics, saw. So it seems to be a callback to the idea of the blinding encounter with the real. And in Miller's reading, this is a sort of substantial, substantified doctrine that Lacan hadn't seen in the beginning, and it's the goal. That's why it's a teleological reading of Lacan. It's the goal to which Lacan was tending, and which our own reading must always keep in mind. Zizek adds, this is a little like Althusser. Did you know that at the end, just before his collapse, Althusser looked to a private letter from by Marx, written just a little before his death. This is, according to Zizek, in an aside, this is a little ridiculous. He continues. So, in a letter written about the German economist Wagner, and only in these few lines, there is a sort of voila, that's it, according to Althusser. It's there, whatever it is, the insight. It is only there that one sees Marx. There's a little of this same thing in Jacques-Alain Miller. He searches through the old Lacan, or the late Lacan, for a point where Lacan supposedly saw. I don't believe in all that, says Zizek. I believe that the last period, not all of it, but let's say the 6 or 7 last years, this last period is an impasse, a dead end. I do not believe in this last topological stage. So, in the light of what he's been saying about the problem with the ecstatic blinding encounter with the real and the conformist return, and with the notion that not only can you not be satisfied with a substantified imaginary real, but you can't be satisfied, speculatively speaking, with the symbolic real, such as is to be found in the topological stage. There's something more, which is also in Lacan, of the thing that constantly resists and flees symbolization, but is constantly there and can't be gotten rid of either. So that's why you can't come back, I imagine. You come back, but you've got the stain. Is that like Spider-Man with Venom? Anyhow, let's go on. Fabian Tarby continues. What about then your own reading of Lacan? What does it insist on? Zizek replies, I can propose for you my recent formulas, which are part of my new book to come, in progress, on Lacan and Hegel. So he's saying that in 2010, so he's probably referring to Less Than Nothing, which was published in 2012. So it's work in progress at that stage. My point of departure is the following. Why, despite the filiation with Heidegger, did Lacan insist up to the end on the word subject? Lacan knew very well Heidegger's thought, and this thesis, according to which the subject was only modernity, will to power, etc. That's Heidegger's thesis. The thesis, according to which the word subject was not appropriate to designate the meaning of human experience. Well, Lacan maintained the word right up to the end. So this is a major divergence between Lacan and Heidegger. That's a divergence over the subject, over the cogito, and over the sense of modernity, or even the appropriateness of that concept. Lacan returned with all possible force in the logic of the phantasm to the cogito during the years 1950 to 1960. Lacan played with the question of knowing how to transcribe, how to retranscribe, how to retranslate cogito ergo sum. So remember, that's usually translated in English by I think, therefore I am. Zizek here is going to go through a set of reversals that I find absolutely astonishing. So let's go. According to Zizek, so we're getting stages there. I haven't taken time to analyze them numerically to see if it makes another set of three, but maybe I can cut along while I'm doing it. Lacan begins by the statement to transcribe, to use Zizek's word, cogito ergo sum. I am not there where I think, or the heart of my being is not there where I think. But immediately he drops or abandons this formula because it can still be read as a romantic philosophy of life. Yes, the heart of my being, the desire is not there where I think. The emphasis on a philosophy of interior life can lead to irrationalism of philosophy. So it's too substantial, and in a way of positing a counter substance, it um, uh, produces vitalist irrationalism. So maybe he's thinking of Bergson, maybe he's thinking of Deleuze, although Deleuze's philosophy of life um, is constantly undermined by the fact that Deleuze claims it's a philosophy of inorganic life, of inorganic um, organisms. And whatever one may think, Deleuze is anything but an irrationalist. Very quickly, Lacan proposed an opposite reading. So I already had one. The first one was, I am not there where I think. Second one, there where I think, I am not. This seems to be just an inversion of priorities, but we'll see. The unconscious is there where I think, but I am not there. The lie is rather on the side of being. I think this will become clearer when he gets to the more satisfactory transcription and explains it as well. So it's still not good enough. He's just inverted his first transcription while keeping its terms. The lie is rather on the side of being. What Lacan proposes next in the logic of fantasy is rather the identity between cogito, thought, and real, but an empty identity. So this is number 3. So I think once again we have this phenomenon of a list of 3. Cogito ergo sum means I do not think, because it is a thought that is totally tautological and so empty. What is it that I think? I think what? I think that I think, and I am not, because it's a totally empty form. Okay, we're getting a really I would even say powerful reformulation. We have cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. And the conclusion of the transcription is I do not think, because I am not. So how can that be a transcription of I think, therefore I am? And the key is the notion of the void, of the empty subject and the empty form. It is, let us say, like the empty set of set theory. I think, therefore I am, but I am not, because I am only this totally empty point. And I do not think, because my thought is only this totally empty form. Okay, I think that's a tour de force, a conceptual exploit, that we can only sort of applaud and be stunned by. But why, in this case, did Lacan nonetheless insist on this term of the subject? If I don't think, because I don't exist, because my thought is empty and I am empty, why, if it's all empty, why insist on the term of the subject? Zizek continues, I have a radical thesis um, to about this. Lacan accepted, in general, Heidegger's thesis, according to which language is the house or the domicile of being. But Lacan adds that it is a torture house. He doesn't stop saying it. Uh, Language is like a torture. The subject is something which suffers from language by suffers from language from the signifier. It is this idea that one cannot be at home. In the text, he adds, "At home, sweet home." He continues, in this house that is language. So we can't be at home in language. And it's for this reason that Lacan insists on the term subject. It is because Heidegger does not see this relation of suffering between being and language, that there is in him, in Heidegger, this sort of trust in language. Heidegger says that one must only listen to language, that language speaks, that there is a wisdom of language. So Heidegger, however far he may have gone, came to a wisdom relation to language. So that's 42 minutes. Once again, I've cut this section in the middle. So I will continue very soon. Zizek is going to continue to reflect on the torture house of language, and in a way that I find very interesting, he's going to analyze in Lacan's thought three levels or statuses of the coincidence of opposites. So I hope this is of use, of interest, and I hope to go on at least a little longer. So please give me some sign that this is of any interest or use to someone out there. Okay, bye-bye.